Caroline Leavitt's job as the press secretary to make sure what she's saying is true.
Afternoon from the president directly on the topic of tariffs. And as you all know, April 2nd day, President Trump has proudly dubbed it Liberation Day.
Ever watch someone's career implode in real time? White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt just delivered the most catastrophic briefing in recent memory, fumbling basic questions about Russian oil and tariffs while journalists looked on in shock.
For our country, what he means by that is it will be a day where the United States of America will no longer be ripped off by nations around this world.
The disaster didn't end there. When Fox News offered her a chance at redemption against Elizabeth Warren, Leavitt walked straight into a political wood chipper. This isn't just embarrassing. It's a masterclass in how not to handle the press. And I've got the receipts. Before we move on, I'd like to ask you a small favor. If you appreciate this content, please take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Over 98% of you watch the videos without subscribing. It costs you nothing, but it makes a huge difference to us. So, did you click the subscribe button? Great. Thank you so much. Now, back to the video. The White House briefing room transformed into a crime scene the moment Caroline Leavitt took the podium. What followed wasn't just a press conference. It was a public execution of her credibility. Before she uttered a single word, the atmosphere reeked of impending disaster. Journalists weren't there to get information. They were circling like sharks sensing blood in the water. Caitlin Collins and Yamiche Alcindor weren't hiding their expectations of a train wreck. Collins had already labeled Leavitt's previous statement on auto part tariffs a full-blown hallucination, a brutal assessment that set the tone for what was coming. Peter Doocy, never one to miss an opportunity, actually suggested a game to predict Leavitt's next blunder. The room wasn't just hostile, it was actively betting against her success. The lethal blow came immediately. When questioned about Russian oil waivers, Leavitt delivered what might be the most career-ending response possible. "I don't know whether the president did or not." The room went dead silent. This wasn't a simple gaffe. It was a press secretary admitting complete ignorance about a fundamental administration policy on national television.
When asked, "Do you have any evidence for the things you've asserted?" goes, "You're a reporter, you find out."
Things spiraled further when the topic shifted to tariffs. When confronted with basic economic questions, Leavitt's response was straight out of a 1920s nationalist playbook.
Fair trade practices restored. We are no longer going to allow our allies, our competitors, and our adversaries to take advantage of American workers.
"I believe the president has been incredibly clear, Jonathan, on where he stands and what he envisions for the future of America," she declared, as if vague patriotic statements could substitute for actual economic literacy.
President Trump and his team are putting a stop to these threats in restoring American strength around the world. The Trump peace through strength approach.
The bloodbath continued as Collins directly challenged her on the logic of tariffs. How exactly would taxing manufacturing inputs like steel and aluminum boost domestic manufacturing? Leavitt's pathetic response. "I understand your concern, Caitlin, but this is a necessary transition," offered zero substance, zero data, and zero confidence.
Afternoon from the president directly on the topic of tariffs. And as you all know, April 2nd day, President Trump has proudly dubbed it Liberation Day.
The final devastating blow came when reporter Zaria asked the simplest economic question imaginable. "Caroline, just to be clear, tariffs are taxes on imports. Imports are bought by American businesses, which means tariffs are paid by American. Why do you keep insisting they're not?" Instead of answering, Leavitt snapped, "I think it's insulting that you're trying to test my knowledge on economics." The room fell silent. In that moment, everyone witnessed a press secretary accusing journalists of testing her knowledge, while simultaneously confirming she had none to test.
Caroline Leavitt's job as the press secretary to make sure what she's saying is true.
To try and sow chaos in this White House. And this has been the most successful first 2 months of any administration ever.
The briefing wasn't just a failure, it was a complete surrender. If the White House briefing was a public execution, Fox News just delivered Leavitt to her own private interrogation chamber. The network that promised her safe harbor instead threw her directly into the path of Senator Elizabeth Warren. a woman who's been destroying financial predators since before Leavitt was born. What followed wasn't just an interview. It was a methodical dismantling that exposed the administration's economic fantasy world. Brett Baier set the stage with his typical Fox News composure, introducing what viewers expected would be a softball session. Warren entered with the calm confidence of someone who's spent decades in the trenches of economic warfare. Leavitt appeared polished on the surface, but the camera caught her eyes darting nervously as Warren settled in across from her. Without wasting a moment on pleasantries, Warren fired her opening salvo. Was Trump governing for everyday Americans or billionaires like Elon Musk? The question landed like a bomb in Leavitt's lap. Instead of providing specific evidence of policies helping average citizens, Leavitt retreated to vague talking points about 70 million Americans who felt forgotten, left behind, ignored by the institutions that were supposed to lift them up. When she claimed Musk's benefits weren't corruption but success, and the system working for once, Warren's expression spoke volumes. Where was the actual evidence? The temperature in the studio dropped 20 degrees when Warren began citing cold, hard facts. Mass layoffs, executive orders that bypass basic procedures, entire departments hollowed out overnight, she listed methodically. When the Dow Jones bleeds 700 points in a single afternoon, that's not winning. That's fear. That's capital retreating. That's a self-inflicted recession. Leavitt had no counter data, no economic indicators to support her empty claims about prosperity.
The administration is working hard on behalf of the American public every day, but the mainstream media continues to be focused on a sensationalized story from...
Warren's systematic demolition continued as she exposed the administration's favorite buzzwords as meaningless cover for destructive policies. Oh, innovation, streamlining, cleansing the system, Warren mocked. If we could run the government on catchphrases alone, we'd have a budget surplus by now. She hammered home market realities. The Dow fell 743 points Tuesday. The S&P dropped nearly 3%, Treasury yields spiked, investors are pulling out of core manufacturing, and regional banks on edge. The final blow came when Warren looked at Leavitt with something resembling pity. "You're young, you've got time to figure it out," she said. "But no, you're not wrong. I am an old woman, and that means I've seen this show before and I know exactly how it ends." So now we know the real reason behind Leavitt's nightmare performance. It wasn't stage fright. It wasn't media bias. It wasn't even Fox News setting her up to fail. The brutal truth? You can't defend the indefensible. The administration's policies were doomed from the start, riddled with contradictions that no spokesperson could possibly untangle. How could Leavitt explain tariffs lowering prices while simultaneously admitting they increase costs for manufacturers? It's economic gibberish.
The president's view on all of this remains the same today as it did yesterday. And I think it speaks volumes about the leadership of this president.
This isn't just one press secretary having a bad day. It's the smoking gun that proves these policies were half-baked from the beginning. Remember this when officials dodge basic questions. It's not media bias, it's broken policy.